Undertale is a game so ridiculously popular that I don't even need to do one of those cliché intros where I tell you who made the game and what it's about. You're on the internet, so I'll just assume you already know almost everything about Undertale. The game has already been dissected thoroughly by countless other people. I personally recommend Hamburger Guy's analysis, but I believe there are some more abstract aspects of Undertale that have been generally overlooked. Specifically, I want to address some less talked about metanarrative details, consider the purpose that this meta-storytelling serves, and examine how the game combines metanarrative with ludonarrative. I do expect you to know the general concept of Undertale. You can choose whether to kill or spare foes, which then determines which of the 3 endings you get, and I'll be spoiling all of them constantly. If you haven't played the game, first off, wow, but also, here's your warning, go play it. There have been numerous interpretations of Undertale's plot and meaning, some of which are valid and insightful and some of which game theory. But I believe this is a game about player morality and how we interact with games and media in general. This is fairly obvious in the game's core concept of letting you choose between killing and sparing monsters, but less apparent are some of the ways this game conveys these messages. In order to create a video game story about video games, Undertale uses very clear examples of metanarrative, which is storytelling that references its own nature of being a story. To demonstrate with examples from another medium, think adaptation or Deadpool. In doing this, the game establishes a non-traditional relationship between the player and the game, where it acknowledges its state as a game and involves the player themselves in the story. Undertale takes it one step further and combines this with ludonarrative, which is storytelling that arises from gameplay. Like how in Florence these dialogue box puzzles get simpler over time to show the couple finding common language. Undertale's ludonarrative allows it to emphasize points it makes about the very mechanics you're using. Consider what we know about Undertale's protagonist. They're silent, their gender is ambiguous, the few lines they say in the game are chosen by the player, and you even get to name the fallen human at the very beginning. As an Alex, I do not feel any emotional connection with people who aren't called Alex. I just don't find other names relatable. This is all fairly standard. Many games use silent or customizable protagonists to help players project themselves upon the main character. However, do keep this in mind because the game does some more interesting things with it later. While the main story doesn't get meta until the end of the game, the core gameplay loop uses the concepts of EXP and fighting monsters in general to convey a message about video games. Violence is ingrained in how we tend to depict mechanics in video games. Fighting and combat systems are at the core of many genres. It's considered norm among game developers and players alike to the point that we don't even notice it, and Undertale highlights that. The player needs to choose between mechanical rewards for morally wrong actions or story events and a general warm feeling for being nice at the cost of staying weak for the entire game. It's a meta message about how we play games told through gameplay. The first ending you get, the neutral ending, is that of disappointment. It leaves an awkward aftertaste, to put it mildly. After 2 legendary battles, you get a lifeless denouement where the credits just pop onto the screen with the same sound effect on repeat, followed by a phone call from Sans with literally a black background to go along with the dialogue. It feels incomplete. The neutral ending dissatisfies the player to signal that the story is not finished. It uses meta-storytelling to urge the player towards the pacifist ending. Appropriately, the song playing during the Sans code is named An Ending. It lacks the energy and importance for being the ending, it's just an ending. The pacifist ending starkly contrasts the neutral ending in how it uses meta-narrative. You get an epic, rainbowy boss fight climax after which you're able to revisit the entire underworld to look back at your journey. Then there's playful credits where you get to see everyone's life on the surface, set to a song that reincorporates all the main melodies of the game. It feels satisfyingly concluded and resolved. After the credits, instead of taking you back to the main menu like most games would, it leaves you hanging on this screen. You have to close it yourself and put it down. Notice what's happened to the bridge between player and character. Turns out that the name you chose at the beginning was for a different fallen human, and the protagonist is actually called Frisk. This made me feel a bit strange, as if rather than the protagonist being a blank slate I could draw myself upon, Frisk is a person with their own goals and life. The game destroys the bridge between player and character before sending Frisk off to a future that you can't be a part of. Frisk's story has just begun, but yours is over. Along with the wrapping up the story nicely, this conclusiveness further serves the meta-narrative by telling the player to stop playing. The right thing for the player to do would be putting the game down forever and letting the monsters have their freedom. The simple mechanic of a save file here holds important narrative weight. And then there's the Genocide route. Many people end up playing the Genocide route because it seems like the natural thing to do here, based on how we typically interact with video games. The neutral and pacifist endings, despite sending you away, also establish that you might get a unique, meticulously crafted experience if you kill everyone. We're simply used to thinking that because something is made by a developer, then it's meant to be experienced by the players. It's not so much malign intent on the player's part, but rather unhealthy attachment that leads here. However, this very completionism and curiosity is part of what Undertale comments on. We could, of course, try to philosophically unpack the question of whether it's okay to kill someone who doesn't exist, but at this point it's not even about whether these characters are real and alive. In most games, we only apply our morality when the game makes it childishly obvious that there's supposed to be a moral choice, but then we go on with killing everyone anyway. In the context of those games, you don't need to apply morality to basic mechanics, because by avoiding murder, you're unable to progress. However, Undertale's context is the idea that mindless killing in video games is something that has seeped into our culture. The game asks you to apply morality because if you don't, you miss the game's messaging about applying morality to games. The worst sin you commit by playing the Genocide route is failing to understand the game's meaning. The first core difference between Genocide and the other routes is that Genocide is annoying. Most of it is spent walking around waiting for encounters while taking away puzzles, fun interactions with characters, and everything else that made the game charming. Doing Genocide is not fun or engaging, it's draining. The simple change in gameplay structure acts as further disincentive to take this route. The gameplay is telling a story about playing the game. Eventually, instead of exclamation marks, the game starts giving you these creepy smiley faces whenever a fight begins. The player too is happy about the start of each encounter. The monotonous nature of this route makes every opportunity to kill a relief. The Genocide route culminates in the infamous Sans battle. A morbid, sorrowful dialogue accompanies notoriously difficult attacks that serve as one final deterrent, preventing the player from satisfying their perverted curiosity. I've seen a lot of people online miss the whole point of this battle. It's easy to look at a comic relief character showing a darker side and conclude that the character is evil and edgy and must be drawn with the red eyes. But Sans is the good guy here. Interestingly enough, each character in the game has this recurring melody called a leitmotif, playing during scenes about them. Sans too has a leitmotif that appears in the songs Sans, It's Raining Somewhere Else, and even the unused Sans boss theme. This melody is not to be found in the infamous song that serves as background for this fight, Megalovania. That's because it's not his boss theme, it's yours. Megalovania is a play on the word megalomania, which is an obsessive desire for power. You are the megalomaniac. The final moments of Genocide have you meet the first fallen human, who proceeds to delete the game. This blank void you're left with after Genocide is Undertale's one final meta-narrative trick. It's the game's way of saying, well, look at what you've done. Clearly, any player morality does not concern you at all, so the game decides to take away the game itself. Hopefully, by now the game has made its messaging abundantly clear. Undertale is not the only game to brilliantly use meta-narrative, but while some other games get really clever with breaking the fourth wall, I've seen no other game that so masterfully plays with the nature of this meta-narrative and combines it with ludonarrative in order to create meaning. Games like One Shot will use meta mechanics as part of their narrative, but Undertale uses the mechanics themselves to create meta-narrative. Undertale teaches game designers to consider the mechanics we present meta-narrative with and take account of the meaning that arises from this. While Undertale is far from perfect, this playful storytelling combined with non-stop subversion of expectations and an overall charming style makes Undertale one of the most important games of the last decade.